All right. The topic under discussion today is an extremely important one. It's called strategic management, or if you may, strategic development. So, as most of us already have an idea, when the syllabus was modified and the format restructured, this P4 was added to it. Now, paper 4, the title of which is business strategy, demands that you refer to all those topics that used to be a part of strategic management, the original section 6, which is not there anymore. And by referring to the passage and by referring to the context, you should be able to formulate an appropriate strategy or carry out a strategic analysis or draw a comparison between two different strategies with reference to the case study or the information provided there, right? So I would like to emphasize that you go through all those topics again, which used to be a part of section 6 initially, whether it is pest or SWOT or ANSOS matrix, support is 5 force analysis, and then try to come up with the suitable answer. Okay, so when you're attempting a question on strategy, you know what the format is. There are going to be two questions, 20 marks each, and you will have 1 hour 15 minutes to attempt these two questions. I'm talking about paper 4, obviously. And you need to work on your time management because it is going to be tight. You'll have something like 35 minutes per question. And referring to the context is absolutely essential, but you need to have a very firm grip over the format of the answer. And primarily, this is what we are going to cover during this class. Okay, first of all, as usual, the introductory paragraph, and you know what the checklist is when it comes to the introductory paragraph. All the 3 boxes that need to be ticked. You have to refer to the passage first, give the background, identify the problem briefly, and define the key term. So these 3 boxes, they have to be ticked whenever there's an introductory paragraph. That goes without saying. So in paragraph 2, straight away, there has to be some discussion pertaining to pest analysis and SWOT analysis, right? I would strongly suggest there's no need to discuss the entire topic, whether it is pest analysis or it is SWOT analysis. Don't try discussing all 8 elements here, no. Because like I said, time is of the essence. Just select a point or maximum 2 from each, 1 or 2 from pest analysis, 1 or 2 from SWOT analysis, establish a link with the passage and move on to the next paragraph. So for instance, in pest analysis, you can discuss the economic environment, highlighting issues such as the purchasing power of customers. Or if you wish to discuss the political and legal environment, then maybe the government policies that will have an impact on the business or on the situation that has been discussed in the passage. Similarly in SWOT analysis, maybe identify one good opportunity to become a pioneer, for instance, if there's no competition. Or maybe something from strengths and weaknesses. If you have a motivated workforce, that can be highlighted as a strength, so on and so forth. So the point that I'm trying to make is, don't try discussing the entire pest analysis or the entire SWOT analysis in detail, because then it will become unmanageable, keeping in view the time restriction or time constraints. Okay, so 1 paragraph for pest and SWOT. Moving on to the next paragraph. Now, it is advisable that Boston's matrix and ANSOS matrix, they should be referred to. If you have time, you can quickly draw the structure also, the matrix structure. But don't forget mentioning or referring to the Boston's matrix and the ANSOS matrix. So based on the information that you have, try to label everything properly. For instance, if the product being discussed, it is at the introductory stage, then there's a very high probability that it's going to be a problem child because of the teething problems. Similarly, coming to the ANSOS matrix, if they've described something to the effect in the case study, obviously P4 we are discussing here, that this was an already established business and they have found a new market. So a new product is being launched, either in the existing market, that will be a case of product development of course, by the same company, or if an already established business has decided to launch its product in another market, that will be a case of market extension. So depending on the situation, you have to categorize it properly, whether it's a case of product development or market extension or diversification or whatever, right? So Boston's and Amstrup's matrix, both of these, they form an important part of strategic analysis, and preferably in the third paragraph, these two should be explained with reference to the context, obviously. Then right after this, there has to be a paragraph which is a blend of decision trees, Porter's 5 force analysis, and core competence. So my advice to you is, come up with a paragraph that combines these three: decision trees, Porter's 5 force analysis, and core competence into one, right? And decision trees, yeah, you're not required to draw a tree diagram, obviously, but since, in most of these case studies, you're required to draw a comparison, there are multiple options being discussed, go with option 1, go with option 2, purchase system 1, or decide in favor of system 2. There's a comparative analysis. So in all such situations, decision trees, they prove to be quite useful. So what you can discuss is, what you can write is, that this XYZ company, they, while a strategy is being formulated or a comparison is being drawn, they should rely on the decision trees technique, because decision trees, they allow businesses to compare various options and select the most suitable one or the more suitable one on the basis of their expected outcome. So by mentioning terms such as expected monetary value or expected return, you can easily refer to decision tree or the tree diagram, and you can advise the business or the investor that they need to bring this to use in order to come up with a more effective strategy. Compare various options by applying decision trees, and on the basis of their expected outcome, choose one. Similarly, in core competence, you have to suggest something. You have to identify a factor which, in your opinion, can play a vital role in the success of the business, right? So it could be a technologically advanced feature that should be added to the product, yeah, or anything, any feature that acts like that serves the purpose of a distinguishing factor. So you need to suggest whatever you discuss, just try to justify it. I keep telling my students, always find the answer to the question why. Whatever you discuss, you have to justify your statements. There has to be a logic to it, right? Find the answer to the question why, and why. And the other important word to be used frequently is however. However represents evaluation, basically, that this is a highly useful decision, or this will lead to the desired results. However, it might backfire also because of the risk factor. So keep giving reasons for your statements, for your recommendations, and keep evaluating those statements. The risk factor must not be overlooked. That goes without saying, right? So yes, core competence has to be there. And thirdly, in this paragraph, 5 forces analysis. You see, Porter's 5 force analysis, because there has been a paper in the past, recently actually, in which there was a separate question on Porter's 5 force analysis also, in addition to the usual strategy-based question. So Porter's 5 force analysis, threat of new entrants, bargaining power of buyers, availability of substitutes, etc. All of these have to be taken into consideration, especially if it's a competitive environment. If it's a competitive environment, then you will suggest that if this XYZ company wishes to overcome competition, they have to give due attention to these factors: the bargaining power of buyers, availability of substitutes, so on and so forth. So Porter's 5 force analysis is highly relevant to strategic development, especially if it's a competitive environment. If you know it's a pioneer or something, the business, and there's no significant competition, then Porter's 5 force analysis might not be that significant. But usually it is a competitive environment, so five force analysis, it has to be there. So this would be one paragraph. Right after this comes the marketing mix. So those 4 P's or 4 C's, they have to be identified. The product, describe the product, suggest the features that should be added to the product. Could be packaging also, could be any other feature, the ingredients, etc. Discuss price and keep justifying, like I said, remember the words why and however. So suggest an appropriate pricing strategy and try to justify it. Penetration pricing because it's the mass market, or maybe cost plus pricing because it is more flexible. Pick one and justify it. And don't forget that PED, calculation of PED, price elastic demand, if the relevant data is available. And if that's not the case, still discuss it once, that the marketing department must calculate the PED before they set a price. They should know whether the demand is elastic or inelastic. And when it comes to place, it's all about distribution. I strongly recommend that in most of the cases I've seen, a combination, a blend of single level distribution and zero level distribution usually works fine. Doesn't matter what the product is. I think in most of the cases, a combination of zero and single level distribution works fine. Zero level, when you sell it directly to the customers, you get it delivered to the doorstep, or you have your own showroom, the manufacturer, or single level distribution in which you sell it through outlets owned by others. Then most of the products, I think this can prove to be effective. So that's your place. And then promotion, of course, it has to be a blend of above and below the line promotion both. So suggest ideas which are relevant. If you're discussing advertising, then discuss whether it's going to be electronic media or print media, and depending on the nature of the product, whether you advise them to use billboards or social media, whatever, and combine above the line promotion with below the line promotion, which obviously involves different types of incentives for the customers who decide in favor of that product or that brand. But be very careful when you're discussing below the line promotion. Suggest ideas that make sense. If it's a car manufacturer, and I've seen these answers when I go through the papers, if it's a car manufacturer, then buy one get one free won't make any sense, right? So in that case, maybe after sales service, etc., might be more relevant. So suggest a below the line promotional strategy, keeping in mind the context or the nature of the product, right? So that paragraph on marketing mix, that needs to be added. And in all these questions, which are strategy based, they're going to be lengthy answers, needless to say. So you have to learn, you have to memorize the format so that you don't waste any time. Straight away from one paragraph or one step, you move on to the other. So after having discussed all of this, the introductory paragraph and Pest and Swot and Boston and Ansoff, and then something about core competence, 5 force analysis, decision trees, followed by the marketing mix, there has to be, something on the source of finance that are available that you're planning to use. Because when you're launching a project, when you're developing a strategy, you have to raise funds, needless to say. So whether you want this business to rely on the external source of finance or internal sources or both, that should also be a part of this discussion, and justify it properly. Usually bank loans are they're quite common and they're quite relevant. So if you're discussing or suggesting bank loans as a source of finance, then don't forget to discuss the gearing ratio. Again, like PED, if the data is available, calculate the gearing ratio. If it's not, still you have to discuss the gearing ratio, because the gearing ratio tells us about the dependence of a business on bank loans, right? So when you're discussing bank loans, gearing ratio, needless to say, has to be a part of that discussion. So source of finance, retained profit, external sources, hire purchase, going public, whatever you deem fit, and whatever you can justify, that also has to be highlighted there, right? So yes, source of finance, that is also an element to be taken into consideration when you are carrying out a strategic analysis, and there are various options available and you have to choose one. So let's suppose there are two options, and in case of one, there's an easier availability of source of finance, so obviously the balance will be tilted in the favor of that option, right? Other factors such as the interest rates, the prevailing interest rates, the government's anti-inflationary policy, all such relevant factors must have to be taken into consideration when you're discussing source of finance especially. If you want, this can be mentioned initially also in pest analysis, in that political and legal environment. Because pest analysis is the study of micro and macro environment of a business. Okay, so when you're winding this up, an ideal conclusion to the essay on strategy would be, a brief discussion pertaining to a contingency plan. When you are developing a strategy, there has to be a contingency plan also. Remember, contingency planning, this was also initially a part of strategic management. So you must always suggest and discuss that, in case the original plan fails, there has to be a plan B, and mention, specify, suggest that plan B. That if they're planning to make an investment in country X and it does not lead to the desired results, then this is something that they can explore in country Y. Suggest a contingency plan, a backup plan. That is also very important, and an excellent conclusion to the answer also. In order to reduce the risk factor, you have to suggest, you have to develop a contingency plan also, right? So more or less, if you attempt this question within this framework, of course you can come up with the additional points also, but as long as it is within this framework, and if you try to remember this format, you can come up with an above average answer to a question based on strategic analysis, strategic choice, or strategic management, right? So hopefully, I think you'll find this discussion useful, and I would also strongly recommend that you guys select a question or two from the past papers and try attempting this yourself once, because it's all about written practice. Keep this format with you, go through the case study, and by following this format, see if you can come up with a relevant answer, and preferably in the given time period also. See if you can manage this in 30 or 35 minutes, because like I said, you will always be pressed for time. But it's all about practice, right? And keeping all these factors in mind, I think we can manage P4 with a fairly high degree of confidence, I think. All right. So this should be it for now.